For 2 years, I believed my parents when they said Grandma's money was gone. I worked double shifts, drove a dying car, and ate ramen noodles while they took vacations and renovated their kitchen. Then my estranged aunt appeared with a yellowed envelope addressed to me in Grandma's handwriting. I knew about my inheritance. It made me question if my parents ever really loved me at all. My name is Olivia, and for most of my life, I believed my parents were good people. They were the kind of parents who went to parent-teacher conferences, who made sure I had a new backpack every school year, and who reminded me to say my prayers at night. I never doubted them. I never had a reason to. But the biggest lessons in life are often learned not from the people you love, but from the secrets they keep. It all started with Grandma Helen. My grandmother was the anchor of our family. My father's mother, she was a woman of quiet strength and a sharp mind. She lived in the same small, white clapboard house on Cedar Street that she'd lived in for over 50 years. It was a place that smelled of cinnamon and old books, a place where the floors creaked in the same spots every time you walked across them, and where the backyard was a wonderland of overgrown roses and a giant oak tree with a swing. Going to Grandma's house was the best part of my childhood. I remember sitting on her porch swing, the chains groaning a little as we swayed back and forth. I must have been about 8 years old. I asked her, "Grandma, who will get your house when you go to heaven?" She didn't scold me for asking a morbid question. She just laughed, a soft, crinkly sound, and pulled me closer. "Well, my sweet Olivia," she said, her blue eyes twinkling behind her wire-rimmed glasses, "this old house and everything in it will go to someone who loves it as much as I do. Someone with a good heart who will take care of it." I puffed up my chest. "That's me, Grandma. I love it most of all." She hugged me tight. "You do, don't you? You have the heart for it, Olivia. Don't you ever let anyone take that from you." I didn't understand what she meant then. I was just a kid. But those words stuck with me, buried deep in my memory like a forgotten seed. My childhood was filled with moments like that. Every Sunday after church, my parents would drop me off at Grandma's house while they ran errands. Those were the best days. Grandma would be in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour, pulling a tray of chocolate chip cookies from the oven. The cookies were always perfect, crispy on the edges and soft in the middle. We'd sit at her small kitchen table, and she'd tell me stories about when my father was a boy. She told me about the time he fell out of the oak tree and broke his arm, and how he cried more because he was scared of getting in trouble than because of the pain. She told me about my grandfather, who I never got to meet, and how they built the garden together, planting every rose bush by hand. My father was different back then, or at least I saw him differently. When he picked me up from Grandma's, he'd seem lighter, happier. He'd hug her tight and tell her he loved her. My mother would wait in the car, usually on her phone, tapping her fingers impatiently on the steering wheel. Looking back now, I realize she never really liked going to Grandma's house. She said it was dusty and old-fashioned. She complained about the creaky floors and the outdated kitchen. But at the time, I didn't notice. I was too caught up in the magic of my grandmother's world. As I grew older, high school came and went, and then college. I went to a state school a few hours away, studying elementary education. I didn't get home as much as I should have. Life gets busy, you know? There were exams and friends and boyfriends, and the visits to Cedar Street became less frequent. I'd call Grandma on Sundays, and we'd talk for an hour about everything and nothing. She never complained. She always said she was proud of me. She'd tell me about the birds at her feeder, about the new book she was reading, about how the roses were blooming. She made everything sound beautiful. My parents, Mark and Linda, lived in the next town over, closer to Grandma. They visited her more often. They helped her with groceries and doctor's appointments. I was grateful for that. It eased my guilt for not being there. They always told me, "Don't you worry about your grandmother, Olivia. We've got it covered. You just focus on your future." And I believed them. I thought they were being the perfect children to their aging mother. What I didn't know was what really happened during those visits. I didn't know that my mother would comment on the antique furniture, saying things like, "This would look beautiful in our living room." I didn't know that my father would bring up money, asking Grandma if she had enough, if she had thought about selling the house, if she had made a will. I didn't know that they were already circling, already planning, while I was miles away, trusting them completely. I remember one specific conversation that Grandma mentioned to me years later, though at the time I didn't think much of it. She said, "Your father came by yesterday, and he seemed very interested in my finances. He kept asking about my bank accounts, my retirement savings. I told him not to worry, that I had everything under control. But he wouldn't let it go. He said I should put his name on my accounts, just in case something happened to me. Can you imagine?" She laughed it off, but looking back, I can see the concern in her eyes. She knew. Even then, she knew what they were after. Then, during the spring of my junior year of college, the call came. It was my father. His voice was thick and strange. "Olivia, it's your grandma. She passed away in her sleep last night." It was peaceful. The world seemed to tilt. I remember sinking onto my bed, the phone cold against my ear. The woman who smelled of cinnamon, who taught me how to bake chocolate chip cookies, who held my hand during thunderstorms, was gone. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. I just sat there, tears streaming down my face, while my father's voice droned on about funeral arrangements. I don't remember much about the next few days. I drove home in a daze. I sat through the funeral viewing, looking at Grandma in her casket, dressed in her favorite blue dress. She looked peaceful, like she was sleeping. I touched her hand. It was cold and hard, nothing like her warm, soft hands that had held mine so many times. I pulled away, sobbing. The funeral was a blur of black clothes, tearful hugs, and stale sandwiches at the church basement. I saw my parents at the center of it all, accepting condolences with somber faces. My dad, Mark, looked so much like Grandma around the eyes. It made my heart hurt even more. People kept coming up to me, saying how sorry they were, how much they loved my grandmother. I nodded and thanked them, but I felt like I was moving through water. Nothing felt real. After the funeral, we went back to Grandma's house. It was the first time I'd been there since she died, and it was like walking into a ghost town. Everything was the same, but everything was different. Her reading glasses were on the nightstand. Her slippers were by the bed. The house was silent in a way it had never been before. I stood in the living room, looking at her bookshelf, running my fingers over the spines of her favorite novels. I pulled one out, an old copy of Little Women, and opened it. Inside, in her handwriting, was a note. For Olivia, who loves stories as much as I do, I started crying all over again. My mother came up behind me. "Olivia, we need to talk about some things. Your father and I are going to handle all the arrangements. Don't you worry about anything, you just focus on finishing the semester." "I want to help," I said, wiping my eyes. "There's nothing to help with," my mother said firmly. "We've got it covered. You go back to school. We'll take care of everything." I nodded, too overwhelmed to argue. I hugged them both, told them I loved them, and went back to college. I threw myself into my studies, trying to distract myself from the grief that sat heavy in my chest. I called my parents every week, asking how things were going. They always said the same thing: "Fine, fine, don't worry about it, we're handling it." Looking back, I should have been more suspicious. Why wouldn't they want me involved? Why wouldn't they want my help going through her things, sorting her memories? But I was young, and I was grieving, and I trusted them. I trusted them completely. A few weeks after the funeral, the numbness began to fade, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. I went home for the summer, back to my parents' house. It felt strange, empty without the knowledge that Grandma was just a short drive away. One evening, after a quiet dinner, my father called me into the living room. My mother was already there, sitting on the couch, a manila folder in her hands. They both had serious expressions. "Olivia, honey," my dad began, clearing his throat. "Now that some time has passed, we need to talk about your grandmother's estate. Her will." My heart gave a little flutter. I thought of the house on Cedar Street, the overgrown roses, the creaky floors. I thought of what Grandma had said to me on the porch swing all those years ago. "Okay," I said, sitting down across from them. My mother opened the folder. "It's a very simple will, sweetie. Your grandmother didn't have much. The house, some savings, a few personal items." She glanced at my dad. My dad took over. "As her only child, the house and the bulk of her savings passed to me. Your mother and I have talked about it, and we've decided it's for the best to sell the house. It's old, it needs a lot of work. It's just not practical to keep it. Sell it?" The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Sell it, but Grandma loved that house. She wanted it to stay in the family. My mother leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Oh, honey, I know it's sentimental, but we have to be practical. The property taxes alone are a burden, and the money from the sale will be a great help to us. Your father's business has been a little slow, and we have some debts. It's the smart thing to do. But what about me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. My dad's eyes widened a little. You, Olivia, you're 20 years old, you have your whole life ahead of you. You don't need a big, old house. We're your parents. We're looking out for your best interest. When we sell the house, we'll set some of the money aside for you. For when you graduate, maybe for a down payment on a car or to help you get settled in your first apartment. Some of it? I asked. Of course, my mother said smoothly. We're a family. We take care of each other. And we're the ones who have been taking care of Grandma for the last few years, driving her to appointments, making sure she was okay. It's only fair. It sounded so logical, so reasonable. They were my parents. I trusted them. The tiny seed of doubt that had sprouted in my mind was quickly buried under a lifetime of trusting them. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. Okay, I'll miss the house. My dad smiled, a look of relief washing over his face. We all will, honey, but it's for the best, you'll see. For the next few months, the topic was dropped. I went back to college for my senior year. I threw myself into my studies and student teaching. I tried not to think about Cedar Street. Then, one day in October, I got an email from my dad. It was short. Subject: Grandma's house. The message just said, sold it, closed today, got a good price. That was it, no phone call, just a 3-sentence email. I stared at the screen for a long time, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. Sold. It was really gone. I called him that night. He was short with me, said he was busy, and that we'd talk about the money for me later. Later never came. A few months went by. I graduated. I was struggling to find a full-time teaching job, working as a waitress to pay the bills. I was living in a tiny, cramped apartment with 2 other girls. Money was tight. I remembered my dad's promise about some money from Grandma's house. A down payment on a car would have been a lifesaver. My old clunker was on its last legs. I called my dad one evening. After some small talk, I finally broached the subject. Hey Dad, remember you mentioned maybe setting aside some money for me from Grandma's house? I'm really struggling with my car situation, and he cut me off. His voice was different, harder. Olivia, we're in a bit of a tough spot ourselves right now. Your mother had some unexpected medical bills. The money is tied up. We can't just hand it out. Hand it out? I was stunned. It's not handing it out, it was Grandma's, you said? I know what I said, he interrupted again. But things change, we're your parents. We'll help you when we can, you just need to be patient. Patient, I tried to be patient. For another year, I was patient. I called less and less. The conversations became stilted. Every time money came up, there was a new excuse. The stock market was down, they had to fix the roof. My mom's car broke down. I began to feel like a beggar, asking for what I felt was rightfully mine. The worst part was the isolation. My friends from college were moving on with their lives, getting jobs, getting engaged. I was stuck in a dead-end job, driving a car that made strange noises every time I went over 30 miles per hour. I couldn't afford to go out to dinner or buy new clothes. I felt like I was drowning, and my parents, the people who were supposed to throw me a lifeline, were standing on the shore, watching me struggle. I started having nightmares about Grandma. In the dreams, she was standing in front of her house, but the house was on fire. She was calling my name, but I couldn't reach her. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. I felt like she was trying to tell me something, but I didn't know what. During this time, I also started going through old photo albums. I'd look at pictures of Grandma, of her house, of the 2 of us together. I'd trace her face with my finger and wonder what she would think of me now, struggling and alone. I hoped she would be proud of me. I hoped she knew how much I missed her. It was my mom's younger sister, my Aunt Patricia, who finally pulled back the curtain. I hadn't seen Aunt Patricia in years. She and my mom had a falling out before I was born, something about a disagreement over a family heirloom. They were estranged. I only knew her from a few old photographs and the occasional whisper from Grandma. From what I'd gathered, my mother had wanted a valuable antique vase that had belonged to their mother, and Aunt Patricia had refused to give it to her. The argument had escalated, and they hadn't spoken since. Grandma had always looked sad when the subject came up, but she never took sides. One Saturday afternoon, there was a knock on my apartment door. I opened it to find a woman I vaguely recognized from the photos. She had the same blue eyes as Grandma. She was older than in the pictures, with streaks of gray in her dark hair, but the resemblance was unmistakable. "Olivia?" she asked, her voice soft. "Aunt Patricia?" I stammered. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "I'm sorry to just show up like this. I got your address from an old Christmas card your grandmother kept. Can I come in?" I invited her in, my mind racing. She sat on my worn-out couch, looking around at the cramped space. After a few minutes of awkward small talk, she took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eye. "Olivia, I need to tell you something, and it's not going to be easy to hear. It's about your grandmother's will." My stomach lurched. "The will? My parents already handled it. They sold the house." Aunt Patricia nodded slowly. "I know they sold the house, but they didn't handle the will, not the real one." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. It was yellowed with age and had my name written on the front in shaky, familiar handwriting. It was Grandma's handwriting. "What is that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "This," Aunt Patricia said, holding it out to me, "is your grandmother's last will and testament." "The real one?" I stared at the envelope, my hand frozen at my side. "I don't understand. My parents, they had a will. They showed me a paper." "They showed you a paper," Aunt Patricia confirmed. "Probably a fake or an older, revoked version. But this is the one she had me witness 3 years before she died. She didn't trust a lawyer. She trusted me. She was afraid, Olivia." "Afraid? Of what?" Aunt Patricia's eyes were full of pity. "Of your father, of your mother. She saw the way they looked at her house, at her things, not with love but with greed. She told me Mark has always felt entitled. He thinks what's mine is his. I have to protect Olivia. She's the one with the good heart." Tears were streaming down my face now. I finally took the envelope, my fingers tracing my name on the front. "Your grandmother made me promise to only give this to you if your parents tried to cut you out. I've been watching from a distance, Olivia. I heard they sold the house. I waited to see if they would do right by you. It's been over a year, and I knew they hadn't. They never intended to, so I'm here, keeping my promise to my sister." With shaking hands, I tore open the envelope. Inside were several legal-looking documents. I started to read. The legal jargon was confusing, but the final paragraphs were clear as day. It stated that the house on Cedar Street, all of its contents, and a significant savings account and investment portfolio were to be held in trust. The trustee was a bank in the next town over. And the sole beneficiary of this entire trust was me, Olivia Ann Parker, upon my 25th birthday. There was also a personal letter, folded neatly and tucked inside. I unfolded it, my tears falling onto the paper. "My dearest Olivia, if you are reading this, then the thing I feared has come to pass. Please don't be angry with your father. He is my son, and I love him, but somewhere along the way, he forgot the difference between need and greed. Your mother, I fear, only encouraged him. I saw in you, from the time you were a little girl on my swing, a kindness and a depth that they lack. You loved this house, not for what it was worth, but for what it was. You loved the roses because they were pretty, not because you could sell them. You loved the creaky floor because it was a sound of home. I did this to protect you and to protect the legacy of our family. The house, the money, it's not about the wealth. It's about having a safe place to land. It's about having a foundation that no one can take from you. I wanted you to have that. Don't let this make you bitter. Let it make you wise. Use it to build the beautiful life I always knew you would. And never, ever stop having that good heart. All my love, forever and always, Grandma Helen." I clutched the letter to my chest and sobbed. I sobbed for Grandma, for the loss of her, for the lies, for the betrayal. But I also sobbed with a strange, overwhelming sense of being loved. She had known, she had seen it all coming, and she had protected me from the shadows. Aunt Patricia stayed with me for hours, holding my hand, letting me cry. We talked about Grandma, about the old days. She told me stories I'd never heard before. It was like getting a piece of my grandmother back. "She used to write me letters," Aunt Patricia said, her own eyes moist. "Every month without fail. She'd tell me about you, about how proud she was of you. She said you were the best thing that ever happened to this family. She loved you more than anything, Olivia." "Why didn't you ever come around?" I asked. "Why did you stay away?" Aunt Patricia sighed. "Your mother, Olivia, she made it clear I wasn't welcome. And your father always backed her up. It broke your grandmother's heart, but she couldn't fix it. Some people, they dig in their heels and they won't budge. Your mother is like that. She has to be right. She has to win. That's what this was about, you know? The money, the house, it was never about need. It was about winning. They couldn't stand the thought of you getting something they wanted. The next few days were a blur. I contacted the bank named in the will. I called the number on the letterhead, my heart pounding as I explained who I was. The woman on the other end, a Miss Delgado, was professional and kind. She confirmed everything. The trust was real. It had been established 3 years before Grandma's death, just as Aunt Patricia had said. The house, which my parents had sold for what they thought was a good price, had actually been undervalued. They had sold it quickly, eager to get the cash, and had accepted an offer well below market value. The bank's trustees, following Grandma's instructions, had managed the investments from the sale of the house. They had also managed the untouched savings account and a collection of antique jewelry Grandma had kept in a safe deposit box, all of it now part of the trust. The total value was staggering to me. It was well over $1 million. My parents, in their greed, had stolen the proceeds from the house sale, which was just a fraction of the whole pie. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought they had won, but Grandma had been smarter than them. She had known they would try something. She had planned for it. She had protected me from beyond the grave. Miss Delgado explained the process to me carefully. Because the trust had been properly established and witnessed, and because my parents' will was clearly fraudulent, I had a strong legal case. The bank's legal team would handle everything. I didn't have to face my parents alone. Over the next few weeks, I met with Miss Delgado and the bank's lawyer, a man named Mr. Harrison. He was tall and serious, with gray hair and kind eyes. He walked me through every step of the process, explaining the legal terms in plain English so I could understand. He told me that my parents would be contacted and given an opportunity to return the money voluntarily. If they refused, we would take them to court. They're not going to give it back voluntarily, I said. I know them, Mr. Harrison nodded. Then we prepare for court. But don't worry, Olivia, the evidence is on our side. Your grandmother was very thorough. The day after my 25th birthday, I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't told them I was coming. I hadn't spoken to them in months. My father opened the door. He looked older, wearier. When he saw me, a flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe annoyance, crossed his face. Olivia, he said flatly, this is a surprise. We need to talk, I said, my voice calm and steady. I walked past him into the living room. My mother was there, watching television. She looked up, startled. Olivia, what are you doing here? She asked. I didn't sit down. I stood in the middle of the room, looking at them. For the first time in my life, I didn't see my parents. I saw two people who had lied to me, who had stolen from me, who had tried to erase my grandmother's final wish. I'm here to talk about Grandma's will, I said. My dad shifted his weight. We've been over this, Olivia. The house is sold. We helped you when we could. You helped me with nothing. I cut him off, my voice sharper than I intended. You lied to me. You showed me a fake will. You took the money from the house and you spent it. My mother's face went pale. My dad's jaw tightened. That's a serious accusation, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You have no proof of that. I reached into my bag and pulled out a copy of Grandma's will. I held it up so they could see it. This, I said, is proof. This is Grandma's real will, witnessed by Aunt Patricia, filed with the county. It leaves everything to me in a trust. Everything. The house, the savings, everything. The silence in the room was deafening. My father stared at the paper in my hand as if it were a snake. My mother's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. That's not possible, my dad stammered. The lawyer, we had a will, we handled everything. You handled a forgery, I said, or you handled an old will. I don't know, and right now, I don't care. What I care about is that you stole from me. You stole my inheritance, my grandmother's final gift to me. My mother finally found her voice. It was a thin, reedy sound. Olivia, please, let's talk about this calmly. We can work something out. We're your parents. You stopped being my parents the day you decided your greed was more important than your daughter, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. It hurt to say them. It hurt more than anything. But it was the truth. I have a lawyer now, I continued. The bank's lawyers, they are very interested in this case. The proceeds from the sale of the house that you took that was trust property. You are legally obligated to return every single penny, with interest. My dad's face crumpled. The anger was gone, replaced by a look of pure panic. Olivia, please, we spent some of it. We had debts. We can't just give it back. We'll lose everything. You should have thought of that before you lied to your own daughter, I said. My voice didn't waver, but inside, my heart was breaking all over again. I wasn't just confronting thieves. I was confronting my father and mother. I'm not here to destroy you, I said, after a long pause. I'm here to get back what is mine. My lawyer will be in touch. He'll explain how this will work. You can either cooperate or you can fight it in court, but I promise you, you will lose. I turned to leave. I had said what I needed to say. Olivia, wait, my mother cried out, standing up. We did it for you. We were going to give you the money eventually. We were just holding on to it for safekeeping. I stopped and looked back at her. The lie hung in the air between us, pathetic and transparent. I didn't say a word. I just shook my head and walked out the door, closing it softly behind me. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. I pulled over twice, once because I couldn't see through my tears, and once because I thought I was going to be sick. Confronting them had been harder than I imagined. A part of me, the little girl who had loved them, had hoped they would break down, apologize, beg for forgiveness. But they hadn't. They had lied to my face, even when the truth was right there in my hand. The legal battle lasted for months. It was ugly and painful. My parents hired a lawyer and tried to fight, but the evidence was overwhelming. Aunt Patricia's testimony, the properly filed will, the bank's records. Their lawyer tried to argue that they had acted in good faith, that they believed the other will was valid, but no one believed them. The bank's lawyers were relentless. They uncovered bank statements showing exactly where the money from the house sale had gone. My parents had paid off their credit card debt, bought a new car, taken a lavish vacation to Hawaii, and renovated their kitchen. They had spent almost all of it. I had to sit through depositions where they were forced to account for every dollar. I watched my father squirm as the lawyer asked him about the Hawaii trip. And how much did that vacation cost, Mr. Parker? The look on his face was one of pure shame. My mother tried to blame him, saying it was his idea, that she had wanted to save the money for me. But their bank records told a different story. They had both been spending freely, without a single thought about me. In the end, they were forced to sell their own house to repay the money they had stolen from the sale of Grandma's. They had to liquidate their retirement accounts. They lost almost everything. My mother's sister had been right all those years ago. Greed had destroyed their relationship, and now it had destroyed them financially and any chance of a relationship with me. I didn't gloat. There was no satisfaction in their downfall, only a deep, hollow sadness. I had lost my parents. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had proven their love had a very high price tag. But I also gained something. I gained clarity, I gained freedom, and I gained a future. The process of getting my inheritance back was complicated, but the bank's lawyers guided me through every step. First, they filed a claim against my parents for the full amount of the house sale proceeds, plus interest and legal fees. When my parents couldn't pay, the court ordered the seizure of their assets. Their house was sold at auction. Their cars were repossessed. They moved to a small apartment in a different town, and I heard through mutual acquaintances that my mother had taken a job at a department store. My father's business, already struggling, went under completely. I felt a twinge of guilt when I heard these things, but it was quickly replaced by anger. They had done this to themselves. They had chosen greed over their own daughter. If they had just been honest, if they had just followed Grandma's wishes, none of this would have happened. They would still have their house, their retirement, their relationship with me. But they had made their choice, and now they had to live with it. With the money that was returned and the rest of the trust, I did what my grandmother would have wanted. I didn't buy a mansion or a sports car. I bought the old house on Cedar Street. It had been flipped by the people who bought it from my parents, painted in ugly, modern colors, the roses torn out and replaced with boring shrubs. The new owners had tried to make it look like every other house on the block, stripping away all the character that made it special. But I didn't care. It was still her house. The bones were still there. I hired contractors to restore it. We peeled off the ugly paint and restored the original clapboard. We tore out the modern landscaping and replanted roses, the same varieties Grandma had loved. We refinished the original hardwood floors, sanding away years of wear to reveal the warm wood beneath. We found the old porch swing in a barn on the property, where the flippers had discarded it, and we hung it back up on the porch. It took over a year, and it cost more money than I ever thought I would spend, but slowly, painstakingly, we brought the house back to life. The best part was filling it with Grandma's things. The trust had included all of her personal possessions, which my parents had stored in a rental unit after selling the house. They had planned to sell them, but they never got around to it. Now those things were mine. I brought back her furniture, her books, her quilts, her dishes. I hung her photographs on the walls. I put her reading glasses on the nightstand, right where they had always been. Every room felt like her again. Now I live there. I'm a teacher at the local elementary school, just like I always wanted to be. Every morning, I wake up in the room that used to be hers, and I feel her presence. I teach little children how to read, just like she taught me. I bake chocolate chip cookies using her recipe, and I share them with my students on their birthdays. The house is filled with laughter and love, just like it was when she was alive. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I sit on the porch swing with a cup of tea, the chains groaning in that familiar, comforting way. I think about her. I think about the little girl who sat on this very swing and asked about the future. I think about the strength of a woman who saw the darkness in her own son and built a fortress of light to protect her granddaughter. The betrayal by my parents was a wound that cut deep. It changed me. It made me see the world differently, more cautiously. For a long time, I had trouble trusting people. I second-guessed every kindness, wondering if there was an ulterior motive. I went to therapy, and it helped. My therapist told me that what my parents did was not my fault, that their choices were a reflection of them, not of me. It took a long time to believe that, but eventually I did. I also learned to forgive, not for them, but for myself. Holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I didn't want to carry that weight for the rest of my life, so I forgave them. I haven't spoken to them since the legal battle ended, and I don't know if I ever will. But I've let go of the anger. I've made peace with what happened. Aunt Patricia and I have become close. She visits often, and we sit on the porch swing together, talking about Grandma. She tells me stories I never heard, about their childhood, about the pranks they used to pull, about the boys they liked. It's like getting a second chance at having a family. She's the grandmother I still have, and I treasure every moment with her. The money from the trust has given me security, but it's the house that has given me peace. It's more than just a building. It's a living memory of the woman who loved me most. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of the wind through the roses, every ray of sunlight through the old windows, it all feels like her. I've made some changes, of course. I updated the kitchen, but I kept her old table. I added a bathroom upstairs, but I kept her clawfoot tub. I modernized the heating and cooling, but I left the old radiators in place because they reminded me of the sound they made on cold winter mornings. It's a blend of old and new, just like my life. And every time a breeze rustles through the new roses, I feel her there, her hand on my shoulder, her voice in my ear, reminding me, "You have the heart for it, Olivia. Don't you ever let anyone take that from you." They didn't, Grandma. They didn't. I think about my parents sometimes. I wonder if they regret what they did. I wonder if they lie awake at night, thinking about me, about Grandma, about the choices they made. I hope they do, not because I want them to suffer, but because I want them to understand. I want them to see that their greed cost them everything that really mattered. But I don't dwell on it. I have a life to live. I have students to teach, roses to tend, cookies to bake. I have a future to build right here in the house that Grandma saved for me. The last time I saw my parents was in court, on the day the judge finalized the judgment against them. My father wouldn't look at me. My mother stared at me with an expression I couldn't read, a mix of anger and sorrow and something else, something that might have been regret. I wanted to say something to them, to tell them that I was sorry it had come to this, that I still loved them despite everything. But the words wouldn't come, so I just walked away. Sometimes I think about reaching out. I think about writing them a letter or calling them on the phone. But then I remember the lies, the betrayal, the years of struggling while they lived comfortably on money that wasn't theirs. And I know I'm not ready. Maybe someday I will be. but not today. For now, I'm content. I'm at peace. I have a home, a career, and a connection to my grandmother that nothing can break. She gave me the greatest gift of all, not the money, not the house, but the knowledge that I was loved, truly and deeply, by someone who saw me for who I really was. And that, more than anything, is what saved me. There is one more thing I should mention. A few months ago, I received a letter. It was from my mother. The envelope was plain, with no return address, but I recognized her handwriting. I held it for a long time, debating whether to open it. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to pretend I never saw it. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the mother who packed my lunches and kissed my scraped knees, needed to know what she had to say. I opened it. The letter was short. "Dear Olivia, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. What we did was wrong. I see that now. I let my greed and my pride get in the way of what really mattered. I lost you, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't regret it. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for lying to you. I'm sorry for stealing from you. I'm sorry for being the worst kind of mother. Your father is sick. He has cancer. It's not good. He doesn't know I'm writing this. He's too proud to reach out, but I couldn't let him go without telling you the truth. He loves you, Olivia. We both do. We just forgot how to show it. If you can find it in your heart to see him, even once, I think it would mean the world to him. But I understand if you can't. I love you. I always have." Mom, I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer of Grandma's nightstand, right next to her reading glasses. I didn't know what to feel. Sadness? Anger? Pity? All of it mixed together. I didn't respond. Not right away. I needed time to think. I talked to Aunt Patricia about it. She held my hand and listened. She didn't tell me what to do. She just said, "Whatever you decide, Olivia, it's the right decision. You have to do what's best for you." I thought about Grandma. I thought about what she would want. She loved my father despite his flaws. She would want me to forgive him. But forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. In the end, I decided to go. Not because I had forgiven them, not yet, but because I needed closure. I needed to see them, to hear them say the words themselves, not just in a letter. I drove to the small apartment where they lived. It was in a rundown part of town, a far cry from the nice house they used to have. My mother answered the door. She looked older, thinner, more tired. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Olivia," she whispered. "You came." I nodded. "For Dad." She led me inside. The apartment was small and cramped, filled with cheap furniture. My father was in a recliner in the living room, a blanket over his legs. He looked terrible. His skin was pale and waxy, and he'd lost a lot of weight. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "Olivia," his voice was weak, nothing like the booming voice I remembered. I sat down across from him. "Hi, Dad." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my father started to cry. I had never seen him cry before, not once in my entire life. It was unsettling, seeing this strong man reduced to tears. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry, Olivia. I was greedy and stupid, and I threw away the most important thing in my life. I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed you to know." I sat there, listening. My mother stood in the doorway, crying silently. My father talked for a long time. He told me about the pressure he felt, the debts, the fear of losing everything. He told me how my mother had pushed him to take the money, but he admitted that he had gone along with it willingly. He took full responsibility. "It was easier to lie to you than to admit we had failed," he said. "We thought if we could just get that money, everything would be okay. But it wasn't. Nothing was okay. We lost you, and that was worse than any debt." When he finished, there was silence again. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't ready to forgive them, but I also wasn't as angry as I used to be. The anger had faded, replaced by a deep sadness for what we had lost. "I'm sorry you're sick," I said finally. "I'm sorry for everything that happened. I'm not ready to forget, but I'm glad you told me the truth." My father nodded, wiping his eyes. "That's more than I deserve." I stayed for an hour. We talked about small things, about my job, about the house, about Aunt Patricia. My mother made coffee, and for a little while, we almost felt like a family again. But the tension was still there, the unspoken pain hanging in the air. Before I left, I hugged my father. It was awkward and stiff, but it was a hug. I hugged my mother too. She held on tight like she was afraid to let go. "Will you come back?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I need time," she nodded. "Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere." I drove home in a daze. When I got back to Cedar Street, I sat on the porch swing for a long time, thinking. Grandma's voice seemed to whisper in the wind, "You have the heart for it, Olivia. You always did. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll rebuild a relationship with my parents. Maybe I won't. But for now, I'm at peace. I have my home, my memories, and my grandmother's love wrapped around me like a warm blanket. And that is enough."